Kevin, we are back for episode 2 of Grab Them by the Pod, and you'll notice there are some improvements to this podcast. We actually have theme music now.
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty good. I think the people will like what we've got for them.
Like many things in life, this is an ongoing process. We live and learn from week to week, from podcast to podcast, and I think it'll just keep getting better and better.
Sure, yeah, I think we've got some exciting things to talk about today, and if people will take a listen, they might learn something.
And, if they listen and get back to us, we may learn something from them too. It's very cyclical like that.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing I want to point out, so we got a lot of good reviews from people, a lot of good feedback from some of the folks online. And one of the things that came back to me, they said, Jesse, I've known you for a little while. I didn't know you were a conservative. And I say, well, I'm not a conservative. I mentioned that I was registered Republican, but I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative. I'm a man without a party. And while I say I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative, neither of those are absolutes. I was just listening to a great podcast by the wonderful Dan Carlin. He had a quote, I forget who it was by, and said, when the facts change, so do my opinions. And I'm kind of the same way, I'm not stuck in one area. I'm there to learn and to grow.
Well, that's good. And, we want people to be able to make changes when the facts change. So, and if you listen to, it depends on who you listen to, because when I describe you, I often describe you as a very hard right, communist, a conservative, whereas you describe me as that communist, pinko, whatever you want to call me. And I am not necessarily that far to the left either. So I think if we actually give each other a chance and we listen to what we're saying and we're using facts, then we see a difference.
And I do want to point out, I do have a friend who is originally from West Virginia who has pointed out, you're just a New England liberal. So I'm like, God, it really does depend on who you talk to, on exactly what they describe you as being. But, some people have told me that I'm to a certain degree ineffable.
Well, I do want to point something out. I want to go with what you just said there for a minute. The New England liberal, the idea that
also elite.
You can be a Republican and actually have some liberal viewpoints. And I think that's what we've gotten away from, the idea that we have to be so partisan and we have to be so far to the right or to the left that there's no mix within a party. That's something that we used to have. You go back 40, 50 years when backroom deals were actually made in Congress and these guys got to actually know each other. The reason why they were able to get things done was because there was a mix. There was within the same party. There were liberal Republicans, there were conservative Democrats.
And the Blue Dog Democrats are more conservative Democrats. I mean, one of the things you hear a lot, especially in the last decade, is, he's just a rhino, which stands for Republican in name only, because they are not 100% lockstep with the Republican platform. But who wants people who are just black and white? We want some gray area thrown in there.
That's right. The only way anything will get accomplished. So hopefully we can get more of those types of people in our government.
Fingers crossed, because we're a lot. What is it? There's a lot more than unites us than divides us, as they say, and it's things. I really think it's funny because I've been back in the media so much, but I think a lot of parts with the media shows, whether it's Fox News or whatever, that you have to be one side or the other, and they really push the differences. And if you sat down and you talk to somebody with maybe different views, you have the same values, perhaps, maybe different ideas of how to get there and really hone those values. But I think most people, whether you're a liberal, whether you're a conservative, whether you're a populist, whether you're a socialist, whatever, you have the same values and you want maybe the same things. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, wishful thinking.
Right. So, hey, why don't we get right to it now? There's been a lot of stuff going on the past few days with President Trump. So I'm going to let you take it away. You've got a lot of talking points here you want to start with. Yes. So go ahead.
I think just based on who our president is, we need to have a new segment we start out with called Trump Tweets. That could be very long some weeks, but just go through a couple of the, I would say, crazy things he says and just maybe get a little discussion on them first. Towards the end of last week, he tweeted out that the FBI is totally unable to stop national security leakers that have permeated our government for a long time. They can't even find the leakers within the FBI itself. Classified information is being given to the media that could have a devastating effect on the U.S. Find now. When he says a devastating effect on the U.S., I think he maybe really means a devastating effect on me, Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, I believe so too. And all I can think of here is this reminds me of Watergate, leakers, plumbers, what have you. What's going on here is something that we need to really focus on, because we're missing the heart of the matter. The real threat to the United States of America is the idea that you have a president who doesn't necessarily believe media reports, and also is trying to lead other people to believe the news to be fake, and to believe that it's not what's being leaked, it's the fact that there are leakers, when in reality it's that this very highly sensitive confidential information is being shared with people that don't need to know about it, and he's looking at who's leaking it as opposed to what's being leaked.
And the fact that it's being leaked, I mean, they're not just leaking it for shits and giggles, pardon my language. They're leaking it probably because there's a lot that has to be known, and you can't trust the administration. If you're working for the FBI and you already have this kind of tumultuous relationship with the president, when he's going out there and tweeting, rather than talking to you, having meetings, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, if you're tweeting that kind of stuff out, it's not going to bring you over to his side, and it's probably only going to intensify the leaks.
Yeah, this is uncharted territory here. I know that we've talked about how there was similar issues with a distrust in the media and a general distrust out of a president like Nixon. This is something that it goes above and beyond that.
And it's not an original joke, and it's been said many times, but I feel it has to be said just one more time. Whenever I talk about leaks and Trump, you can't help but think about the thoughts about Russia with the golden showers and all that kind of stuff.
Leak. Take a leak, Donald.
It's funny every time I hear it. It's funny every time I say it. Then he went on and said again, maybe if the millions of people who voted to make America great again, in caps, maybe they should have their own rally. It would be the biggest of them all. And then your boy, Bernie Sanders, tweeted out a picture from Inauguration Day and said, they did. It wasn't. And, I'm not always a huge Bernie guy, but, man, he had Trump there dead to rights.
Absolutely. We can't, I'm at a loss for words here. The president does not believe in fact. The president does not believe in things that can be seen, that can be quantified. He lives in his own world and makes up his own stories that he runs with and tries to get other people to believe. And sadly, he has enough of a following that actually does buy in to his lies.
Here's the reality of things. There is 50% of this country who is against Trump. There are 50% of this country who voted for Trump, but a portion of those are the people who just, when he says he can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'll still support him, that's them. And then a portion of those people are the people who didn't like Hillary, didn't like Trump, but wanted to change. And those are the people who aren't going to be going out there going insane like some of the Trump supporters or like some of the anti-Trump supporters. Those are the people that I think the Democrats have to focus on winning back and showing them that, we do value you, we are the party for you, and that's what we want. So when he says these people voted to make America great again, that's not just one giant group. There are a lot of factions, I think, within that group, and it's picking away the people who are not the hardcores, I guess you would say. That's how you defeat Trump.
Agreed, and I think that they have to tap into the sense of buyer's remorse that might exist amongst some of those more moderate people who were just so ready for change that they were willing to go with what they saw as the complete outsider. And if you can do that, then maybe we can actually get some change that will make more positive decisions that will affect the country in a more positive way.
Some people may just have to subscribe to the idea of that, be careful what you wish for. And that's not me scolding them or chastising them or saying like you're an idiot. It's saying that, you wanted something, you got it. Now, maybe it's not all it was cracked up to be to begin with, but I don't know.
Right.
But moving on, some of the big news that came out yesterday, although I guess it's not actually really much of a surprise, Trump tweeted out that he will not be attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner this year, in which everybody has a great evening. First of all, he doesn't want them to have a great evening. Screw that. Second of all, he's the first president in 36 years not to attend. That's the modern era of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where it becomes kind of a roast of everybody. Last time he was there, Obama really gave him a hard time, and some say that's what really pushed him to run. But
right.
It's, someone online I saw posted that he's the definition of an internet troll. You're a big tough guy online tweeting out things, but you can't go and talk to them face to face. And that's really what it is. He's a big tough guy when he's talking with people who agree with him or talking behind Twitter. But when he gets in front of these people, he kind of cowers a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And, this is, like you said, the first time since Reagan in 81. And it's important to note it's not just Republicans. Jimmy Carter in 78 also missed it. He was experiencing exhaustion. He didn't go. But this is a tradition that dates back to Calvin Coolidge in the 1920s. So why not go? And more importantly, Yes, it's turned into a roast, but when you look at the bottom line of what this event is even for, it raises over $100,000 in scholarships for people who want to study journalism. And in this contentious political scene that we have here, there's nothing more important than good, hard, honest journalism to keep these politicians accountable.
Yeah, I don't want to say that they'd be able to get to the point where they let bygones be bygones. I think we're well past that part. But if you could just have Trump and the media come together and just for a night be like, F it, and kind of just be goofy with each other, we'll hate each other tomorrow, like always. But they call it nerd prom. When I was in D.C., it was a big, big night. And it's interesting because Samantha Bee was hosting the anti-Trump dinner, and now if Trump's not going to one, what's the point of that one? It's strange, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think it was a couple people have come out with this, but I think it was Zach Braff from Scrubs who may have said at first that they think Alec Baldwin should go there as Trump and act like Trump the entire night and just do it normally like he would be there.
Yeah, it was Braff. I read about that this morning myself. So that could be interesting in and of itself.
The next tweet he had was actually today. Yesterday he tweeted out Tom Perez had beat Keith Ellison for the DNC chair. And this morning he actually tweeted out that the race for the DNC chairman was, of course, totally rigged. Bernie's guy, like Bernie himself, never stood a chance. Clinton demanded Perez. I think it was more Obama that backed Perez. I mean, not outwardly, but it was his group that wanted Perez. But again, he says it's rigged. He said it's not fair, but he really has nothing to show for it. He has no proof. He, as we'll hear later on, he demands the media have sources and proof, but yet he's happy to willy-nilly just throw whatever out there.
Right, and Donald Trump needs to get over Hillary, right? The election's over. He won, so there's no reason why he should still be hung up on Hillary Clinton, and yet he is, and he's considering this rigged, and at the end of the day, this is not his party. So he shouldn't be passing judgment at all. And secondly, he needs to be careful if he's honestly thinking about re-election, which he has filed that he plans to run again. And I know that's a long way off, but he's looking at alienating people himself. The more he drums up the negative, if he doesn't do everything that his supporters believe that he was going to do, he might turn some of them away. And in 2 years, certainly, there's a referendum coming with the midterm elections, and if he loses control of one or both houses of Congress, he's going to see that maybe these are some negative consequences of his actions, and hopefully something finally holds him accountable for his actions.
And as we've said over and over and over again, if it goes against him, rigged, lies, fake. If it's for him, it was fair. That's If he had won the popular vote and lost the electoral vote, he would be losing his frigging mind right now, which, like some of the Democrats, many of them are too. I give him that. But it's that he says he takes criticism well, but he doesn't. Because he says he takes criticism well when it's deserved, but in his mind it's never deserved, so therefore he can never take criticism. It's a catch-22 with him.
Right. Listen, I deal with children a lot. I have my own children. I'm a teacher. And in those roles, I see kids acting this way all the time. He's a child. He's a man boy, right? He can't take criticism when it's doled out to him, but he can sure dish it out to other people himself. And as you said, he claims that he can take the criticism as long as it's fair. But in his mind, no criticism is fair because he seems to honestly believe himself above all others.
He's like that bully in school that is a big, big, tough guy, but the second someone finally pops him one in the nose, he's running away because he's never had anybody stand up to him before. And again, I don't advocate violence on this podcast, but when I guess metaphorically speaking, popping him in the nose is just standing up for him and not letting him get away with his nonsense. I mean, if you let him get away with it, there's a faction, just like the faction that voted for him, there's a faction that will believe anything he says, and that this is all fake news and the mainstream media is nonsense. But also, it's important to note that when he's
a classic bully.
Yeah, when the term fake news came out, it was like when it was a website like www.impeachhillarynow.com had some fake news. That was fake news, not just news that he disagrees with. But I don't know. But moving on to the last tweet of the day. This came out actually today. He said, Russia talk is fake news put out by the Dems and played up by the media in order to mask the big election defeat in the illegal leaks. Well, if it's all fake news, why isn't Flynn working there anymore?
Exactly. It's played up to the media in order to amass a big election defeat in the illegal leaks, or it's not, or it's real. And Mike Flynn is a casualty of this. This is real. He was talking with Russia before he should have been, and about things confidentially that he shouldn't have been. And this is real.
The intelligence agencies that he hates have admitted that they hack people. That's not a question. The question is, how much is he involved, or was he involved in this stuff? And the fact that we don't have his tax returns, that the fact that he doesn't want to talk to anybody without screaming and calling them fake, we don't know. So he's perpetuating it. And maybe we're falling into the Trump trap, where we're just talking about his nonsense instead of the actual issues. But it's just impossible to do anything otherwise.
Right. And that leads us perfectly into the next piece here, which deals with the media and what he did late last week with blocking out certain news outlets from the press gaggle. If we don't have an honest and open media that's able to keep tabs on what the president is doing, we won't know whether or not these things are happening.
It's ridiculous. I watched him speak to CPAC, which we'll talk about a little later on. But after that, I saw that, Sean Spicer was going to be having his daily White House press briefing. I was ready to watch it. And then, of course, right before it was supposed to be aired, it disappeared. It wasn't on the schedule anymore. And then things started to trickle out, saying that he had kind of in the West Wing a little press gaggle for only specific organizations, things like Breitbart, which is the home of the alt-right, the Washington Times, One American News Network, that sounds real legit, things like that, where they blocked out CNN, New York Times, LA Times, Politico, BuzzFeed, and then organizations like the AP and Time magazine, they actually boycotted. Good for them. But when you only bring in the organizations that agree with you, that's like, it's leading to like state-sponsored media. I work with a guy whose wife is Russian. He lived in Russia in the 80s and 90s, and he goes, it's just, this is exactly what was going on over there. You only hear what they want you to hear.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure North Korea doesn't have any critical news outlets.
No, they if you said something that Putin didn't like, I would be afraid to put that out.
Right. And this, again, drives the importance of having that open, honest, and fair media. We can't just live in a world that only gives positive press. We need to hold our politicians accountable, and the president is politician number one. If he's only allowing people to cover him that are going to give him positive news coverage, we need to be able to see that. And for me, maybe it's just because I am engaged as a citizen and I do follow politics and I know what's going on, that to me this is just baffling. But sadly, I think there is a large percentage of our population that doesn't either even know this is happening or see this as being wrong. This is scary. This is how, as you said, state-sponsored journalism. This is communism. This is dictatorship. This is the things that we've seen in these countries that we have fought against for years. And it's happening here on United States soil.
It is. As you say those things, part of me is like, yeah, that's just political hyperbole, but it's not, to a certain degree. It's everything has a beginning, and I just find very disturbing some of these things. The news stories that came out this week that Trump only watches TV. He doesn't like to read. We've talked about that before, that his administration, the people that work with him, have been kind of planting good Trump stories into things like Breitbart and publications like that, and then feeding it into Fox News, so then he sees positive stories about him and he gets happy. They're basically saying you can't leave him alone because he'll watch too much TV and then get all worked up and do something stupid. This is the guy who's our president.
Right. If that's not scaring you, I don't know what will.
And the funny thing that came out of this, I was watching some of the Betsy DeVos speech at CPAC. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the things she said was, some are saying that if you voted for Donald Trump, you're a threat to the university community. The real threat is silencing the First Amendment rights of those with which you disagree. The Trump administration is very big, saying you can't shut out the people that believe like we do, but they're the first people to try to shut out people who disagree with them. It's just ridiculous.
Right. Classic 21st century politicking. What's good for the goose is not good for the gander, right? I can do it, but you can't.
Do as I say, not as I do. So I'm pissed off that Saturday Night Live for the second week in a row was a repeat last night. This stuff, it's just giving it to them on a silver platter, and they're not around. They're dropping the ball. I want to know what they're going to say. They better be back next week.
Right. I, like you, did watch last night, hoping that there was going to be something about what happened late in the week, and was disappointed, but still got a few good laughs in, even though it was from back in November.
So on to the, I guess I would say the number one story right now, and it's already getting old because he just says crazy things that nothing sticks around too long. That Trump spoke to CPAC on Friday. CPAC is like a giant conservative circle jerk, and it's not. When I say conservative, because it's not a Republican thing. It's like the right of the right. Like these are the guys who will follow Trump, into the depths of hell, no matter what, because
Mind
he's
you,
Trump.
not to interrupt, Jess, but a year ago, these people were dead set against Donald Trump being their president, and now they're sitting around, stroking his ego.
Fake news, Kevin. Fake news. They never said that, even though there's probably video of it.
Oh, I'm sure. Facts don't matter.
So of course, Trump can't help himself. He points out that fake news again is the enemy of the people, going back to something that you would hear in like China or communist Russia. But he points out, I didn't say the media, just the fake news. And fake news though is anything that disagrees with him. So it's you can never be. It's a catch-22 that he's okay with things that hate him if it's worthy, but nothing is worthy.
Right. And fake news, the enemy of the state, whereas there are actual enemies of the state out there that, you're diverting news coverage from with your antics. And these things are actually enemies of the state. These things are actually dangerous. The media is not dangerous. Biased media is dangerous, but the real mainstream, or as they call lamestream media, that is not dangerous. That is necessary in a democracy.
Oh, and the other thing is that he, sometimes I'm not a journalist, so I don't know exactly how it goes, but sometimes you have to withhold the names of your sources because they're afraid of their job, they're afraid for their life. Like there's lots of reasons why you have unnamed sources. It's not just because you're fake news. And Trump basically said that he thinks there should be you shouldn't be able to tell news stories if you don't have the names of your sources, and that's against the First Amendment too, in my opinion. It's very scary that, that's great. Hey, guess what? We have these news people, and then they turn up dead again. That's what happens in Putin's Russia.
Right. You can't have journalism if you are forced to announce your sources for every single story. This is why we have whistleblower laws. This is why we have things where people from the inside can report out that things are happening that are not ethical, that are not okay, and get it to the media so that we in the public are aware. That's how the change happens. When you require people to out their sources, as you said, that puts some people's careers and lives in jeopardy, and that's not okay, not in a democracy. And I keep going back to that, but if we want to protect and preserve our democracy, we have to have the ability for our journalists to report on real news and to be able to get that information out there, and that means protecting their sources at times.
And I don't even think he's thinking before he says that. I think he just like, oh, it sounds good, I'm going to say this. He doesn't put any actual thought into the repercussions of some of the things he might say or some of the policies he wants to impose. He just says things, and you never know whether he's going to follow through with it or whether he just likes the sound of his own voice.
Now, what it must be like to be a fly on the wall inside Donald Trump's brain.
I kind of feel it's just like do 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 with the bear with the cymbals clapping.
Ooh, shiny thing.
But God, just imagine, it must be great to be Donald Trump because you think you're the best. Like, I honestly think he buys into some of his BS. So he's gonna have the highest self-esteem of like any president ever because he's always right. He's the best. No one's better than him, which is sad. But
and sadly, in this world of billionaires that he comes from, I honestly believe that they don't realize what the criticism's all about. They don't get it. They don't understand, and they can't imagine why people would not like them, because all their lives they've been entitled. They have been above everybody else, and they don't see some of the problems that they cause. They believe that they're in the right all the time because no one's ever really told them no. Certainly in the business world, no one's ever told Donald Trump no. He gets what he wants. So he doesn't understand this.
And I've said this before, I don't want to be the guy just crapping on Trump because it's the popular thing to do, but he just says things that are just not true. When he was speaking at CPAC, he said there are lines 6 blocks away to people trying to get in. There were pictures of that. It just wasn't true. It was no giant line. People got in, and that was it. He said this is a victory he had. His presidential victory was like no other presidential victory has ever been. Like he has to make everything the best. And if he just said, you know what, a lot of people wanted to get here today, and our victory was great, people wouldn't be yelling at him because he'd just be saying, I mean, I would still disagree with some of those things, but he's not trying to quantify it with just false claims.
No, and like I said, I don't believe that he knows any better. If you look at his upbringing, if you go back in his family history with his father, Fred Trump, his father raised the family to think that they were above everybody else. So since his childhood, he's always had this sense of entitlement and feeling that he was better suited for positions of power, that he was smarter, more able. And here he is now 70 years old, and this is just all he's known.
And he wants kudos because he goes, I told Tom Price and I told Speaker Ryan, we could have just let this Obamacare stuff just explode and it would have been bad for the country. It would have been great for us politically. But I said, that's not right. I'm like, what do you want, a pat in the back because you're claiming
Yes,
you could have let everything go to hell and you didn't? Like, that's your job as president, is to stop that. You want a pat in the back for doing your job.
Right, because he's always been patted on the back.
I don't know. One of the things I take actually to heart is his war against regulations, and to a certain degree, at a low level, I understand there's a lot of red tape, but I work in the regulations world. One of the things I do for a living is analyze some regulations for healthcare issues and how it affects the company I work for. And I've noticed a slowdown since he put out his executive order on regulations, and he wants to cut them by 75%. And he goes, this is literally what he says: I want to put the regulation industry out of business. The next thing he says, by the way, I want regulations. That makes no sense. You want to put them out of business, but you want regulations. You can't have it both ways. And getting rid of regulations, that's what he's doing with the West Virginia and the Kentucky with the coal. And those guys are going to pay for it with their lives when they get. I don't know the history of black lung, but I know working in those mines, it's not healthy for you. It's not good.
Right. Science has continued to prove certain things are not good for us as humans, not good for our environment. We have to, at some point, start to listen to these factual things that are proven. And I know that that's not big or popular within the Trump administration, but facts do matter. Science proves things. It's true. These are truths. We can't deny them.
I'm not heartless. I know there are people who are coal miners, and that's all they've ever known. And with these regulations and the closing of mines, it puts them in a tough spot. I understand that. But the answer is not to go, okay, we're going to go back to something that's really, quite frankly, the past. It's not the future, it's the past. I would rather money be invested into education for some of these. I mean, I don't know what other jobs are out there, but there are jobs that are going to be available in different sectors as we move forward. I would rather educate these guys to move on to other jobs rather than just going, they need jobs, so we're going to stick them back in the same crappy conditions that were there before just to make them feel better. It's not the answer.
Right. You have to be able to adapt to the times. And certainly the coal mining industry is way past its due. And we need to invest some time, money, and resources into retraining, re-educating so that they can find jobs and find work that allows them to make a meaningful living for themselves, but doesn't put their lives at risk, nor the lives of all of us due to the environmental concerns.
We can harp on the CPAC speech forever, so I think I'm just going to go through a couple of things quickly. He directed the military and the defense community to totally obliterate ISIS. Great idea. No one ever thought of that before. He said he'd have a plan within the first 30 days or something, but he's not going to tell us the plan because he doesn't want to spoil it and give ISIS a heads up. So he has a plan. He can't prove he has a plan, and there's no signs of him having a plan, but he has a plan.
So what are the odds that is his plan?
Yeah.
His plan is obliterate ISIS.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Why didn't I think of that before? We're such idiots. That damn Obama, if only he had thought about that. He thinks of things on such a basic level, like what he wants to do, but doesn't worry about how he will do that. How will we go about getting these results?
And in this sense, this is where I can see how he connected to the common working man in the Midwest, right? This is where he is like the common man. He does not have the inside knowledge of how politics work. He doesn't understand how Washington works or how foreign policy works. And on this level, he can connect to those people. But that's not who I want in the White House. That's not who I want to get that 3 o'clock in the morning phone call or have their finger on the big red button. I want somebody who actually understands foreign policy, who can work with leaders of other countries and have a rational discussion with them. So I get it where he connects with these people, but that's not what we want in Washington.
I hope that people in middle America realize that he may be saying what they want to hear, speaking the right words, but that talk is cheap. If you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. And in the next couple of years, and 4 years, hopefully at the most, if he hasn't put his money where his mouth is and taken care of business, you got to show him the door, because he can't say, oh, my plan to obliterate ISIS is a 5-year plan and we're working on it and things are being done. No. You have to show these people in middle America that are facing hardships that you're going to help them and help them soon. And if not, go on to the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. This obviously is going to be an ongoing thing, and we'll keep our eyes on this. But ISIS, the only way you can defeat radical extremism of any religious group is by winning over the hearts and minds of the people who have to live in and around where they operate. We have to convince the people in the Middle East who are dealing on a more direct level with ISIS that the ISIS ideology is corrupt, is that it's not any good. But we're not going to do that by dropping bombs.
Yeah, it's one of those things I've learned I wouldn't say learned, but I've become to soften and change my views over the last decade or so, that collateral damage adds up, and you just create more. You create the next generation of people ready to, whether it's by how it affects their lives, whether it's through the lack of education or propaganda going on down there. You have to really show that it's not us against them; it's us against, for lack of a better term, the bad guys that are there. And I guess that's a very open and fluid term as well. But we can't just go out and just bomb villages back in the Stone Age with all the innocent people there, because that's when you piss off the people they're related to, their neighbors that survive, and so on and so forth.
Right. When you lack education, when you lack exposure to the rest of the world, and you're growing up poor in some small village in the Middle East, and you see the damage and destruction, and you see all the carnage that's there, and then you find pieces of those bombs that were dropped by drones, and you see the sticker on there that says "Made in the USA," what are you supposed to think? Are you honestly going to believe that the United States is there to help you? And I don't think that's the case.
But to be fair, though, I think the military is in a tough position too. I'm glad I'm not the person there making those decisions, because if you had like a Osama bin Laden there, do you kill his family to kill him, or do you don't? I mean, these are well above my pay grade, and I think much like a lot of different arguments, you could probably argue both sides and be right, and both sides and be wrong. So it's something we have to think about as we move forward, and again, not have it be black and white, which I think Trump very much is black and white.
And to an extent, I feel most comfortable with Defense Secretary Mattis in his role, that he has actually stood up to Trump on several occasions, and he's not for torture as a form of getting information out of these people. He said, I'm going to paraphrase him here, but that he could get more out of a pack of cigarettes from some of these detainees than he would by torture. So I would rather somebody actually stand up to some of these ideas of using torture as a policy to get information than somebody who's just going to bow down to President Trump.
And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of torture, not necessarily on moral grounds, but that the fact that I think it's been shown it just doesn't work. When you're being waterboarded or whatever, you'll just say anything to get it to stop. And I think that's the problem. The morality behind torture, and if they do it, if we do it, all that's a long discussion we can have at another time. But yeah, if it's not going to work, you don't do it. Okay, we're moving on to just the final two things here. One, this was just a ridiculous comment he made, and I don't think he even knows what he was talking about. He was talking about how we want to get along with other countries, but there's no global flag. We're the best. Then he says, no matter the color of the blood we bleed, it's the same red blood of patriots. What? No matter the color of the blood we bleed. No, you're saying it's red. He just was babbling on. There's really nothing to say on that. I just want to point that out. The last thing I want to end with here, though, is that he ended with his speech with him playing the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want. To me, that was painfully obvious from this election. I feel like he's saying with that song that, I'm Daddy Trump, and you may not be getting what you want, but sometimes you get what you need, and what you need is me.
Yes, and he is the arbiter of that decision. I think not.
All right. The last thing I want to talk about today, and I'm going to open the floor actually to you a little bit, because I don't know the situation quite as much. And I'm gonna give Betsy DeVos the benefit of the doubt in this situation. I know it's a very personal situation for you. Is that The national lunch program is a very big deal for a lot of reasons, and I'll let you talk about that in a bit. She said at the CPAC thing recently, in her first minute of talking, that she's probably the first person to tell Bernie Sanders to his face that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and I don't think she was specifically talking about the lunch program from what I saw, but also the optics look very bad. I mean, the lunch program, 31 million kids in the United States were on it in 2012. And from what I can tell, the numbers are the same. So if I don't know how much you know about it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the national lunch program.
Well, Jesse, it's no question I'm not a fan of Betsy DeVos. And the biggest reason why is that she's unqualified for her job. She has no background in education. She has not spent a day in a public school as a student, teacher, administrator. She's never sent her children to public schools. And to me, when you lack that base of knowledge about what the common children of this country are going through on a daily basis, then you are not in a place to judge. And again, as I said before with Donald Trump, I honestly believe that in her privileged upbringing, she doesn't really understand why people would disagree with her. But the fact of the matter is, you cited some numbers. I'm going to say some numbers for you too here in our state of Connecticut, where we are podcasting from. As of 2014, 37% of our student population in the state was qualified for free and reduced lunch. Now, 1/3 of all the children, 206,000 students in this state, qualify because their families fall below the poverty level.
And it's worth pointing out that we're a relatively affluent state. So if that's how it is in Connecticut, imagine how it is elsewhere.
Right. And we also, while we are a relatively affluent state, we also have the largest achievement gap in the United States. We have towns such as Greenwich or Simsbury or Farmington that produce great results with their education. And then we have cities like Bridgeport, Hartford, New Haven that are struggling to get students to be where they need to be.
Willimantic, we saw it when we went to college there. Just how that, I mean, I don't know how the school system is, but depending on how the city itself is, can't be great.
Right, and personally, I teach in a magnet school district that serves one of our major cities, and I see this on a daily basis. I know that more than half of my students qualify for free and reduced lunch. And I know what that does to your ability to achieve. And students who receive that free and reduced lunch over time, 40%, they achieve at a 40% lower rate than those students who are coming from more affluent households. So there really is a direct correlation between you being able to have the food and the nutrients you need to fuel your body and your ability to succeed in a classroom.
Well, it's going to affect your self-esteem. How you your self-worth, how you look at yourself. It's not the kid's fault. It may not even be their parents' fault, but it doesn't change the fact that they're gonna, look at themselves and then look at somebody else who may be better off and judge themselves, for whatever reason.
Right. Not to mention all of those things that you just pointed out. So there's a whole host of reasons why I feel Betsy DeVos needs to take a good hard look at what's going on in our public schools, since she hasn't spent much time in them. She needs to see that this is the real story. This is what's happening, and that these young people are failing as a result of the system. And I would hope that she would be able to address that. And I hope that she can take this, cheap throwaway line here and quip about Bernie Sanders and the free lunch and understand that not everybody has had the same privileges that she has in their life.
And I think it's worth saying that if she were to learn from this confirmation experience, learn from everything that's going on now, and use it to affect her policies, and come out with things that you thought were good, you would be more than happy to support her if she suddenly had policies that you thought were good in helping students. You were not against them no matter what, and that's what I think it's important to note. On no matter who's president, no matter who's what, if they do things that are positive, even if you're not my political party or whatever, I'll support those. I mean, President Obama had said, you know what, if they can come out with a better healthcare system than Obamacare, I will support it all the way, because I don't care what's, with my name being on it or getting the credit. I want what's best for the country. And I really wish more people would have that thought process as they move things forward. It's not all about them. It's what's best for the country.
Certainly. And I'd be all for it. Betsy DeVos, if you can do something that is going to positively affect the kids of America, then please, I implore you, please do that, and I would be glad to sign on.
Great. Well, I think that's a good place to end this episode. I just want to let everybody know we are officially on iTunes if you have an iPhone. We are officially on Stitcher if you have an Android. So you can get us no matter what phone you have for the most part. And I've just started putting things on YouTube as well. So you should be able to find us no matter what. Also, we'd love to hear from you guys. So you can email us at grabthembythepod@gmail.com or send us a little tweet at grabbythepod at Twitter. So you know what? We're here for you. We want to get your opinions. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to discuss them on the next episode. Anything you'd like to add before we get out today?
I'm spent.
You're spent. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. We'll be back later this week, hopefully, to talk Trump's presentation and speech to both chambers of Congress. That should be an interesting one.
Looking forward to it.
Later, guys.